Hey guys, welcome back to class. I hope everyone had a great weekend and is settling in with their online coursework now. I just want to start off with a rose and thorn. So my rose for this week is that I've been catching up on a lot of sleep and I'm working on redoing my room. And that's also my thorn because I get lazy, so I'll do some of it and then I stop, but I'll get to it. So this week's readings were about relationships. I think all these readings are pretty good and you could use them and reference them back to your own relationships. So we're just gonna get into the first reading, which was gaslighting is a common victim blaming abuse tactic, and here are 4 ways to recognize it in your own life. So, to start off, gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse in which information is twisted or spun, selectively omitted to favor the abuser, or false information is presented with the intent of making victims doubt their own memory, perception, and sanity. And I feel like it's used to, discredit your own feelings and discredit your own experiences, which a lot of people, I feel like, go through and don't really know what's going on and are confused when they're gaslighted. And I feel like sometimes people even end up gaslighting other people, not knowing how toxic it is. So, the author mentions how because they were depressed themselves, their family would gaslight them and be like, "Oh, well, you're depressed. That's why you aren't remembering things right, or you're depressed. That's why you're overreacting." But we could tell from the article that this author was facing homophobic slurs from their family, which isn't cool ever. And, them thinking that, oh, no, I'm just overreacting because everyone else is saying I'm overreacting, which doesn't make sense. So I think the main things that I want to go over with you guys when it comes to gaslighting is to just go over the main characteristics of gaslighting. So the first thing is that you question the validity or memories of an experience. When you think of a certain thing that happened and you're like, oh, did I really feel that way? Or was that really what happened? The second thing is that there are people in your life that discredit your memories. So people telling you, oh, you have such bad memory, or you don't know what real abuse is, littling your own experiences. I know a lot of people, a lot of people try to discredit other people's feelings because they might have gone through something worse, or they think that what you're going through isn't as bad as what you think it is. So that's another form of gaslighting. The third thing is when you call someone out on their hurtful behavior and they're quick to dismiss you in the situation. So an example of this would be if you're telling your significant other that there's something wrong and they say, "Why do you always bring this up?" There's a reason that you're bringing it up, right? It's because it bothers you and it's something that's hurting you. So to dismiss it like that is a form of gaslighting because you're dismissing their feelings as well. So if you ever do go through gaslighting, or if you ever feel like you're gaslighting yourself, just make sure that you recognize it. So, these tips that I just went over, just make sure that if you feel like you're going through it, check and see if it's happening. Trust yourself. Your feelings are always valid and your feelings are always going to be what's most important. So make sure that you trust yourself and you know that this isn't fair, and push back. So always stand your ground. Don't ever let someone tell you that, you're bugging out for feeling a certain way, or that it's not real, because it is real. You're obviously feeling it. It's obviously going through your mind, so it's real. So we're going to move on to the next article, which is there's a word for the assumption that everybody should be in a relationship. So I think this article is pretty cool because it talks about this idea of a soulmate. And the idea of a soulmate dates back to ancient Greek mythology, in which humans were thought to be four-legged, four-armed, two-headed creatures. And Zeus, the Greek god Zeus, he split them in half because they're thought to be too powerful. So now your whole life you go around trying to look for your other half. So this is why people search for their soulmates, and it creates this idea of romantic love. So it's cute to think about. And this idea that humans have to have a soulmate or humans have to like be in a relationship is this term called amatonormativity, which was also in the reading. So it's the assumption that a central, exclusive, amorous relationship is normal for humans, and in that is a universally shared goal, and that such a relationship is normative, in that it should be aimed at in preference to other relationship types. So in America, that would be a heteronormative relationship between a man and a woman, just two people. This ideology is pretty toxic because it discredits any and all other types of relationships. And that's like where this idea, like, that platonic relationships might not be real because like boys and girls can never be just friends. And like it's toxic because it's not fair. You can't tell someone that they don't like, like love is not just like sexual, it's also like platonic and it's also different types of love. So it's important to think about that too. And also, this ideology, since it's backed up by heteronormativity, it discredits any and all other types of relationships. So obviously, like homosexual relationships, polygamy, like all that type of stuff. So since this is such like a big thing in our society, and like the end goal for everyone is to be married, and like this emphasis on finding your other half, it also is kind of toxic because people end up staying in bad relationships. They think that, oh well, if I'm already unhappy right now, like I'll also be unhappy if I'm single, so might as well stay in this, which is like not true. You could always be happy by yourself. It's just about like your own mindset. And also this was problematic when it was used as a defense for gay marriage because it still instilled this idea that in our society the ideal like way to live is to be in a marriage, which was good in this argument that gay marriage should be legal, but as a society this emphasis on marriage like isn't fair to people who don't want to be in a marriage. Also, I think it's important to think about the fact that marriage used to be more about land ownership and rights rather than love. So, when do you think the switch happened from land ownership and rights to love? And why do you think it's so important in American society? And like, I feel like even when we think about the American dream, it's like, oh, it's to have a family, it's to have a picket fence, and like to have like your dog and all that stuff. So, I think that's like something to think about when we talk about this. Also, just remember a relationship doesn't determine your worth in life. If you end up marrying, if you end up not marrying, that's not something that defines how you are and how successful you are and how much people like you. You can be happy and single for the rest of your life, and that's amazing. Or happy in a polyamorous relationship, and that's fine. Like, it's all up to you, and as long as you're happy and safe, that's all that matters. So the next article was first comes marriage, then comes love. So I think when we hear this whole article was about arranged marriage and how this couple, they met like basically on the day of their wedding, which is like what my parents did. I think that when we hear the term arranged marriage, it kind of scares people because they associate it with forced marriage. Forced marriage and arranged marriage are totally different things. Arranged marriage is like when your families like arrange you to like go on dates or like marry someone or meet someone, and it's totally up to you if you want to do it. There's always that open end where like, hey, I kind of didn't like this person, or hey, I don't want to go on a date and get to know this person. Whereas a forced marriage is obviously like, no, you're doing it whether you like it or not. I think it's really cool to see how in India, 90% of marriages are arranged, and in the world, 60% of 60% of marriages are arranged. And I feel like we don't think about that when we think about marriages. We think that, oh, like you meet someone, you fall in love, and like it's all on your own. But to think that 60%, more than half of the world, goes and does an arranged marriage is pretty cool to think about. Also, like in this article, it talks about how arranged marriages can lead to love because, when you're going through with an arranged marriage, a lot of these cultures that do it, they're very like intense on family relations. They're very, that's like what they're like, they centralize their whole relationships around family. So to have the same family values, to have the same level of education, all that kind of stuff leads to them, ending up, probably having the same like hobbies and interests and stuff like that. So it ends up like they end up falling in love too. And yeah, I think just remember the difference between arranged marriages and forced marriages. Um and then the last article was 10 tips to make a long distance relationship work. So I think this was like a pretty cool article. I've personally never been in a long distance relationship, but if you have and if you want to like talk about it in your journal, that would be cool too. But the 10 tips that like I'm just gonna like go over them real quick. So the first one was to prioritize your schedules well. So obviously, make time to communicate, make time to make sure that you're putting in that quality time, because a relationship isn't just, like saying hi and bye. It's like, forming that connection. The second thing is to make sure your goals and potential end games are in the same ballpark. So, if you're going to be spending this much time, trying to work around with the person, if your end game isn't the same, like if someone wants to get married and someone doesn't, then you might want to rethink your relationship, or you might want to like make sure that like you guys come to, an agreement if you guys want to be together. But yeah, just having that communication is super important. The third thing was don't rely solely on technology. So I know like long distance relationships, obviously you're going to be like more likely to FaceTime and stuff like that, but this article mentions how like sometimes even like a letter in the mail is like more important or like sentimental than just like a FaceTime or a text. The fourth thing was focus on quality communication. So if you're going to be talking to someone, make sure that's not just like shallow conversations. Try and be more, specific on what you want to know, or like what you're trying to like find out about them from that day. That's important too. And then the next one is don't overplan your time in person. So, just go with the flow when you're going to be seeing your significant other after you haven't seen them in a while. Over planning things, it just feels so rushed, and like if the other person gets overwhelmed, it's just going to ruin the experience, and you just want to be able to have that quality time with your person. The next thing is don't put your life on hold. I know it's hard sometimes to not want to do that for someone you like, but you don't have to put your life on hold for someone. If it's meant to be, then it's meant to be. But always focus on yourself first. Your own relationship with yourself is more important than your relationship with anyone or anything else. Reframe the situation as a positive and believe in it. I think that's important, because if you're going into something and you're already kind of bummed out about it, and you feel like it's not going to work, and like you're going to be negative about it, it's kind of hard to make it work. So the more like positive you are, like the better the results might be. And that statement in itself is pretty privileged, because some of us haven't grown up in like in a place where like, we've had a lot of positive situations, and we've gone through more negative things, so it might be kind of harder. So maybe just think about your privilege in that too, when you're like, if you're in a long distance relationship, like how happy you are, how much like you believe that the situation will work, because hey, like you probably went through a lot of good things in your life. So just think about that too. And knowing the difference between checking in and checking up on. So you have to have trust in your partner. If you're going to be in a long distance relationship, obviously like you're not going to be with them in person, you don't really know what they're doing. And I mean, I guess it's like some people might get like suspicious or whatever, but checking in is more important than checking up on. Checking up on is kind of toxic. Like they don't really owe you anything, even though yes, you guys are in a relationship. Like it's not fair to be like someone's parent. They're their own person too. They're going to do what they want to do. So that's why the last thing is let yourself trust and earn that trust yourself. It's important to have that bond with someone if you're going to be doing a long distance relationship, because, you guys aren't going to be together all the time. Like at that point, it's all up to the other person and all up to you, what you guys want to do, what boundaries you want to set. So always do what you would want your significant other to do. And then yeah, so I think that's really it for relationships. Um, all in all, I think the best relationship to work on is the relationship with yourself. So self-love, self affirmations every day in the mirror, tell yourself you're worthy. Um, you know, your feelings are worthy, like you are together, you're whole, like just tell yourself that you love yourself and that's like what matters the most, and you'll see like your relationships around you flourish too. But yeah, so I'm just gonna also do a little bit of you know talking to you right now about like this course. So you guys did really well for your Rose and Thorns and your discussion posts. What I want to remind you guys is that the discussion posts on Tuesday are due at 11:59. I was pretty lenient about the grading for last week's, but this week, me and Alyssa are going to be on top of if you were late, and we're going to take off points for it. And when you do your discussion posts, make sure that you reply to someone else. If you don't reply to someone else, then you're gonna get half off like your credits, and that's participation points. That counts for a lot of your grade. Also, we're gonna be talking about, I think on Thursday, we're gonna be talking about how our final project, like the 2-page paper explaining what you want to do, is gonna be due in April. So we're going to talk more about that on Thursday, but make sure you guys look into that because we revised it, because now obviously everything's online, everything's kind of different. So there's going to be different criteria for each thing. Also, make sure that you guys are just doing everything on time. If you guys need extensions, obviously talk to me or Alyssa. We have emailed a few people who haven't turned in their analytical papers or second ones. Just know, guys, like if you guys don't turn it in, like you guys are going to fail the class. So if we've reached out to you and you haven't emailed us back, like please reach out to us. Like we want to help you. We know everyone's going through a rough time right now. So yeah. All right, see you guys on next Tuesday. Bye.